Hi, fourth grade. Today we are going to be reviewing how to compare fractions. Now, you started comparing fractions in third grade, especially using these drawings, and we even practiced a little bit of that at the beginning of fourth grade. But we run into trouble when we try to compare with drawings because, for example, in a problem like this, comparing 5/8 to 4/6, we see that even when we draw it as perfect as we think we can, sometimes it becomes hard to tell. So we want to find a more exact way to compare fractions to make sure one fraction is bigger or smaller than another. The first strategy I'm going to review is benchmark fractions. Just like with angles, we can have certain types of fractions we keep memorized in our head, so that way we can always refer to that since we can picture it. So the benchmark fractions we use in fourth grade are 0, 1/2, and 1/2. The problem here says compare these fractions using benchmark fractions, like 0, 1/2, and 1/2, and list them in order from least to greatest, the smallest to the biggest one. Okay, I'm going to do that using number lines. So first I want to show 1/2 on a number line. Now that one's kind of easy because it's actually a benchmark fraction. So at the beginning, we're going to have this represent the 0 fraction, which for halves would be 0/2. On this end, it's going to be the whole thing. Oops. So that will be 2/2, 2 out of 2. And then, make that look better like a 2. And then exactly in the middle will be 1/2. I can label that with a little dot. 1/2. Okay. Now I want to show 2/3 on a number line. Switch colors here. So the 0 fraction for thirds would be 0/3. How much would be 1/2 for thirds? All three pieces. 3 out of 3, 3/3 would be 1/2. Now here's a tricky question. How much would be half for thirds? Because 3 is not an even number. Okay, well, I can visualize this bar into 3 equal parts and divide it. So there would be 1/3 and then 2/3 over here, which is my number I can mark. So 1/3 and over here, oops, 2/3. Now, half of 3, if you think of money, we can technically break that down. Half of 3 would be $1.50 if we're thinking money. 1.5. So even though we don't usually write fractions like that, I can still think of that half because when I'm comparing to benchmark fractions, I want to ask myself, is 2/3 close to 0, close to half, or close to 1/2? Well, it's just a little bit bigger than half. Okay, the last fraction to compare is 6. So I ask myself again, what would be the 0 fraction for 6? 0/6. It's always a tricky one to say. What would be 1/2 if we're talking 6? Very good. 6/6. Now, if we're talking 6, how much is 1/2? Hopefully you got it. 3 is half of 6, so 3/6 is half. Okay, 1/6. Now, 1, that's barely any of the 6, so that's actually closer towards 0. I could break this up even more and this into 3 equal pieces, so then I have 1/6 here, 2/6 here, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, and so on. I could label all of them. Oops, sorry, that's hard to see. So I could put my dot here for 1/6. And as you can see, 1/6 compared to the other two is the smallest, then 1/2, then 2/3. So if I wanted to list this out, I would say from least to greatest, 1/6, then 1/2, then 2/3. So ideally, we want to be able to do this in our heads. We want to be able to picture these number lines in our heads. So, a way to do this as a shortcut would be to look at these numbers and picture in your head. Okay, 1/2, well, that equals 1/2. I don't have to do anything about that. 1/2 equals half. That's one of my benchmark fractions. I know it. 2/3. So we ask that again. Okay, what's half of 3? Half of 3 is kind of weird. 1 1/2. So 2 is bigger than that. So I could say, okay, 2/3 is greater than 1/2, which gives me a clue to compare to 1/2 right here, if 2/3 is greater than half. And then 1/6, we can say, well, 0/6, that's pretty close to it. Half of 6 is 3/6. It's smaller than half here. And 6/6 would be the whole. So I could say 1/6 is about 0. It's hardly any of the 6. So if I know 1/6 is about 0, we could even just put about 0. That already, without even drawing the number lines, helps me to put these in order. The one that's closest to 0 is the smallest, the one that's half is in the middle, and the one that's greater than half is the biggest for this situation. So that's using benchmark fractions.